I made you a bracelet, so you'll remember you're not alone. That's what the little boy said, his voice small but filled with warmth, to a woman sitting quietly in her wheelchair on a cold Christmas morning. He didn't know her name. He didn't know that behind those tired blue eyes was Eleanor Vance, the reclusive millionaire CEO who owned half the city. He just saw someone who looked lonely and tried to fix it the only way a child knows how, with kindness. What he didn't realize was that his tiny act of love would change both of their lives forever. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop it down in the comments below. I love seeing our Heartfelt Tales TV family from all over the world come together to share these stories of hope and humanity. Now, take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's begin the story of how one small bracelet became the thread that stitched together two broken hearts. High above the city, where the lights shimmered like scattered jewels against the night sky, Eleanor Vance sat alone. Her penthouse stretched around her like a glass cathedral, silent, spotless, and utterly lifeless. Every surface gleamed with the kind of perfection that comes from wealth, but none of it felt alive. The only sound was the faint hum of the heater and the soft click of her wheelchair as she adjusted her position by the window. Outside, the city was alive. Laughter floated from the streets below. Families calling to each other. Children shouting with joy. Church bells echoing faintly through the crisp December air. It was Christmas Eve, a night of warmth and reunion. But up here in the cold stillness of luxury, there was only the hum of isolation. Eleanor's eyes traced the glittering skyline. The world below seemed drenched in color, but her reflection in the glass looked pale, distant. Blue eyes dull, lips pressed in. She used to love this season. Once, Christmas meant laughter and music, her parents' voices filling their old home. Then came the crash, the one that took their lives and left her unable to walk. Her fingers curled slightly against the armrest. She didn't cry anymore. The tears had come and gone months ago, leaving only the quiet ache that refused to fade. The apartment was immaculate. It always was. Order had become her armor, routine her disguise. On the marble table beside her sat a row of unopened Christmas cards, expensive paper, embossed signatures, hollow words. "Wishing you warmth and joy," they said. She smiled bitterly. Warmth and joy. Two things money couldn't seem to buy. The digital clock on the wall ticked toward midnight. She reached for her phone, scrolling through old photos. Her parents' summer picnic. Her younger self running barefoot through tall grass. The kind of memories that glowed too bright to touch. Her chest tightened. She turned the phone face down. The city erupted outside, fireworks blooming across the skyline in brilliant bursts of red and gold. The flashes painted her face in light for a heartbeat, then faded, leaving her in shadow once more. From below came the echo of cheers and laughter, distant but sharp enough to pierce the quiet. She stared through the glass, watching the celebration she could never feel part of. The reflection looking back at her was elegant, poised, almost regal. The world saw a powerful woman, the CEO of Vance Innovations, one of the most formidable business figures in the city. But inside, Eleanor saw only a ghost trapped in a tower built of her own success. Her lips parted, a whisper barely audible. What's the point if there's no one left to share it with? The question drifted into the air and vanished like smoke. Midnight struck. Bells tolled faintly in the distance. Down below, the world celebrated. Champagne corks popped. People embraced. Music spilled from open windows. And up above, Eleanor Vance sat alone in her silent penthouse, the glow of the city flickering across her face like a memory of a life she could no longer touch. She closed her eyes and drew a slow breath, the kind that carries both exhaustion and a quiet surrender. For a long moment, she just listened, to the wind against the glass, to the faint hum of the city's heartbeat, to the emptiness pressing in around her. And somewhere deep inside, beneath all the sorrow and steel, a small thought flickered, fragile, uncertain. Maybe tomorrow she would go outside, just for a little while. Morning arrived quietly, as if the world itself had taken a deep breath. Overnight, the city had been wrapped in a blanket of snow, soft, white, untouched. The chaos of Christmas Eve was gone now. Streets that had been filled with lights and laughter only hours before lay empty, hushed under the weight of winter. Eleanor Vance wheeled herself through the park, her gloved hands gripping the cold metal rims. The tires left two thin trails behind her on the path. Each push forward felt heavy, but she needed this. The air, the quiet, the reminder that the world still existed beyond glass walls and marble floors. The park was still dressed for Christmas. Strings of lights hung from lampposts, their glow faint in the gray morning. A forgotten wreath tilted on a bench, dusted with snow. Somewhere, a carol played faintly from a distant radio. But there were no crowds, no laughter, only stillness. Eleanor stopped near a frozen pond and looked out at the reflection of the sky. Pale and endless. For a moment, she felt invisible, a ghost moving through a world too beautiful and too far away to touch. And then a sound. Laughter. Small, bright, alive. It rang across the park like sunlight breaking through clouds. She turned her head and saw him. A boy, no more than 7, bundled in a puffy red jacket, his hat too big for his head. He was kneeling in the snow, tongue out in concentration, weaving something between his mittened fingers. She watched quietly. Something about him drew her in. Maybe it was his focus. Maybe the way joy seemed to follow him like a shadow. He hadn't noticed her yet. When he finally did, he froze. Then, after a heartbeat of hesitation, he stood and walked over, tiny boots crunching through snow. "Hi," he said, voice soft but sure. "It's cold, huh?" Eleanor smiled, caught off guard. "It is." He looked at her wheelchair for a moment, curiosity flickering across his face. But not pity. Never pity. Just understanding. Children had a way of seeing people as they were, not as the world labeled them. "I made you something," he said suddenly, holding out his hand. And it was a bracelet, unevenly braided, made of colorful threads and plastic beads that didn't quite match. Some letters spelled something, though the order was slightly off. Eleanor blinked. "For me?" "Yeah," he said simply. "So you're not lonely." For a moment, she forgot to breathe. The air caught in her chest, her throat tightening around words that wouldn't come. This small boy, standing in the snow with his cheeks pink from the cold, had somehow seen straight through her walls. She reached out slowly, her gloved fingers trembling as she took the bracelet. It was clumsy and perfect, beautiful. She turned it over in her palm, then looked up at him. "What's your name?" she asked. "Leo," he said proudly. "What's yours?" "Eleanor." He grinned, wide and fearless. "Hi, Eleanor." She smiled, a real one, small but warm, the kind she hadn't felt in years. "Hi, Leo." He rocked on his heels, clearly pleased with himself. "You didn't have a bracelet, so I made one. My mom used to make them with me before she got sick. I make them for people who look sad. Dad says it's good to share happy colors." Her voice wavered as she answered, "Your dad sounds very wise." Leo nodded solemnly. "He says being kind doesn't cost anything." "I think that's true." Snowflakes began to drift again, lazy and slow. Eleanor watched them fall, the cold air brushing her face. Something inside her, something long dormant, stirred. She looked at the bracelet again, its uneven beads glinting like tiny pieces of hope. "Thank you, Leo," she whispered. He shrugged, a smile tugging at his lips. "You look like you needed it." For a long moment, they just stood there, the woman in the wheelchair, the boy in the red jacket, and the quiet world around them holding its breath. The city felt softer somehow, smaller. The loneliness that had wrapped itself around Eleanor's heart began to loosen, just a little. Leo pointed toward a nearby path lined with twinkling lights. "We live right over there," he said. "If you get cold, my dad makes the best hot chocolate in the world." Eleanor smiled again, the corners of her eyes glistening. "I'll remember that." Leo nodded seriously, then turned back toward the snow, already humming to himself as he began shaping another bracelet. Eleanor stayed a moment longer, looking down at the gift resting in her hand. It was simple and perfect and utterly priceless. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. And somewhere deep in her chest, something fragile began to glow, faint, uncertain, but alive. As she wheeled herself slowly out of the park, the sound of Leo's laughter followed her, bright and free. echoing through the falling snow. Snow drifted softly through the quiet city streets, each flake catching the pale light of morning like a whisper from the sky. The park, still blanketed in white, felt like another world, still, peaceful, suspended in time. Eleanor lingered there longer than she had planned. She couldn't quite bring herself to leave. The bracelet Leo had given her rested on her wrist, uneven, childish, and yet somehow more precious than any piece of jewelry she had ever owned. Every time she looked at it, she felt that small flicker of warmth again, the kind that reaches places even sunlight can't touch. Leo was still nearby, his red jacket bright against the snow as he gathered sticks to build what he proudly called his Christmas fort. He looked up every so often, smiling to make sure she was still there. And every time he did, she smiled back. For a woman who had forgotten how to feel connected to anyone, this quiet exchange was everything. After a while, Leo trotted over, holding a handful of snow and a stick that served as a flagpole. His cheeks were pink, his breath a cloud in the cold air. "Hey, Eleanor?" She looked up. "Yes, Leo?" He hesitated for a moment, the way children do when they're about to ask something big. "Are you all alone today?" The question caught her off guard. It wasn't cruel, just innocent, direct. She could have lied. She could have said she was meeting someone later, that her evening was full of plans. But something in his eyes, that quiet sincerity, pulled the truth right out of her. "Yes," she said softly. "I suppose I am." Leo frowned, thinking hard, as though loneliness were a problem he could fix if he just tried hard enough. Then, without another word, he reached out and tugged gently at her gloved hand. "Come on," he said simply. "You can have dinner with us." Eleanor blinked, startled. "Dinner?" He nodded eagerly. "Yeah, me and Dad are having Christmas dinner. You can come too. There's lots of food, and you shouldn't be alone." She opened her mouth to protest, to tell him that wasn't necessary, that she didn't want to intrude. But before she could find the words, Leo was already leading the way. His small hand gripped the handle of her wheelchair, guiding her down the path with the kind of fearless determination only a child could have. "Leo, really she began. He looked over his shoulder, beaming. "It's okay. Dad always says the best dinners are the ones with extra people." Eleanor laughed softly, a real laugh, breathy and surprised. "Does he now?" "Yup," he said proudly. "He says food tastes better when you share it." They crossed a quiet street, the snow crunching beneath her wheels. The city felt different now, less vast, less cold. Each light in the windows they passed seemed to belong to a story, a home. For the first time in years, she felt like she was stepping into one too. Leo stopped in front of a modest apartment building, its old bricks lined with garlands and paper snowflakes taped to the lobby door. He pressed a button near the entrance, bouncing on his toes as they waited. The intercom crackled to life. "Leo, that you, buddy?" "Yeah." Leo called back. "I brought a friend." There was a pause, a curious one, and then the buzz of the door unlocking. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of cinnamon and pine. Eleanor followed Leo as he led her to a small apartment at the end of the corridor. The door swung open before they reached it. A man stood there, tall, with kind eyes and a cautious expression. He looked to be in his early 30s, dark hair, a trace of stubble, wearing a sweater with sleeves pushed up past his elbows. "Leo," he said slowly, glancing between his son and the unexpected guest in the wheelchair. "You brought someone?" Leo nodded, grinning ear to ear. "This is my new friend, Eleanor. She was all alone, so I invited her for dinner." Eleanor's cheeks flushed with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, The man held up a hand, stopping her gently. "No, please don't apologize." His voice was steady, but his eyes flicked between his son's hopeful face and Eleanor's, elegant, uncertain, but honest. There was a heartbeat of silence. Then his expression softened. "Well," he said, smiling faintly, "any friend of Leo's is welcome here." Leo clapped his hands together. "See, I told you." The man stepped aside, motioning her in. The warmth hit her instantly. The smell of roasted vegetables, the faint sound of music from a small speaker in the corner, the glow of Christmas lights draped unevenly across the wall. It was imperfect and perfect. She hesitated for only a second before rolling forward, crossing the threshold into their world. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice barely more than a whisper. The man closed the door behind her. "I'm Alex," he said simply. "It's good to meet you, Eleanor." For the first time in a long time, she believed him. As Leo darted off to show her his handmade decorations, Eleanor looked around the small living room. The worn sofa, the cluttered bookshelf, the soft and the life in every corner. It was nothing like her penthouse. And yet, for the first time in years, she felt like she'd come home. Outside, the snow kept falling. But inside that little apartment, something had shifted. Something quiet and extraordinary. A stranger had been invited in from the cold. And without even realizing it, all three of their lives had begun to change. The apartment was small, cozy, alive with the kind of warmth money could never buy. The soft hum of Christmas music drifted from a radio in the corner, the scent of cinnamon and roasted vegetables filling the air. Eleanor sat near the table, her wheelchair tucked neatly beside a chair that Leo had proudly pulled out for her. The table itself was simple, mismatched plates, candles that flickered unevenly, a garland slightly frayed at the ends. But it felt right, real. Leo chattered nonstop as he and his father finished setting the food out. "Dad, I told you she liked the bracelet. Look, she's still wearing it." Alex smiled, glancing over his shoulder as he brought a steaming bowl to the table. "So I see." His eyes met Eleanor's briefly, kind, steady, though there was still a trace of curiosity behind them. "He makes those for everyone he likes. You must have made quite the impression." Eleanor laughed softly, the sound surprising even her. "I think he made the impression, actually." Leo grinned proudly. "I told you, happy colors make people happy." Dinner began with a bit of awkwardness, the kind that lingers between strangers trying to find their rhythm. Alex passed her a dish. She thanked him too politely, and for a few moments, the only sound was the clinking of cutlery against plates. But then Leo started telling stories, wild, exaggerated, wonderful stories, about snowball fights, about how he wanted to be an astronaut, about how his dad once burned pancakes so badly the smoke alarm started singing Christmas songs. Eleanor laughed until her eyes watered. It was foreign, the sound. Foreign, but good. Alex watched her quietly for a moment, smiling behind the rim of his glass. "It's good to hear someone laugh like that," he said softly. "The place has been missing that." She met his gaze, and for a second, she saw something familiar there, the kind of loneliness that hides behind gentle smiles. They ate slowly, the conversation flowing more naturally with each passing minute. She told him little things. How she hadn't cooked for herself in years, how her apartment always felt too quiet, how she missed her parents' old tradition of watching It's a Wonderful Life every Christmas Eve. When she mentioned her parents, her voice trembled. She looked down, almost apologetic for it. But Alex didn't rush to change the subject. He just nodded, his expression soft. "I lost my wife a few years ago," he said quietly. Leo was 5. Some days, I didn't know how to hold everything together. Eleanor looked at him, really looked. "I'm so sorry." He shrugged lightly, though his eyes betrayed the effort it took to stay composed. "You just learn to keep moving, even when it hurts." She nodded, understanding in a way only someone who had lived with pain could. Leo, blissfully unaware of the heaviness in their silence, reached for another slice of bread and declared proudly, "Dad says life's like Lego. You just keep rebuilding." Eleanor smiled, blinking back the shimmer in her eyes. "That's very wise," she said. "Yeah," Leo said, mouth full. "Dad's smart sometimes." Alex laughed, shaking his head. "Sometimes, huh?" The warmth returned, laughter weaving through the room like light through stained glass. For a few brief moments, they weren't three broken souls bound by loss. They were simply people sharing food, warmth, and the comfort of being seen. After dinner, Leo fell asleep on the couch, still clutching his new bracelet kit. The soft sound of his breathing filled the quiet. Alex poured tea into 2 mismatched mugs. "You take sugar?" he asked. "Just one," she said. He stirred gently, then handed her the cup. Their fingers brushed, a fleeting touch, but enough to send a small spark through her chest. For a while, they just sat there, watching the snow fall outside the window. Eleanor spoke first, her voice barely above a whisper. It's strange. I've spent years surrounded by people, but tonight feels like the first time I've really been with someone. Alex looked at her, the candlelight catching in his green-gray eyes. Sometimes the right company doesn't have to say much, he said quietly. You just know when it feels different. She smiled faintly. Different, she repeated, as if tasting the word. On the table beside her sat her handbag, slightly open. As she reached for a napkin, a silver pen rolled out, landing near Alex's hand. He picked up automatically, heavy, polished, engraved with a simple V. He turned it over, recognition dawning. He'd seen that logo 100 times, on billboards, news articles, product launches. Vance Innovations. His eyes flicked her face, Eleanor Vance. The name, the composure, the quiet confidence. Of course. But he said nothing. He set the pen back beside her bag, his expression thoughtful but unchanged. Whatever power she held in the world outside this apartment didn't matter here. Not tonight. Eleanor didn't notice. She was watching the snow, her voice soft as she murmured, It's beautiful, isn't it? The way the world goes quiet when it snows. He nodded. Yeah, he said gently. It's like the world finally remembers how to breathe. Their eyes met again. Not as strangers, not as a millionaire and a working father, but as two people who understood what it meant to lose, to endure, to find something fragile and new in the aftermath. The clock on the wall ticked quietly. The candle flickered. When Eleanor finally left that night, Alex walked her to the door. Merry Christmas, he said softly. She smiled, the bracelet still glinting on her wrist. Merry Christmas, Alex. As the door closed behind her, Alex stood for a long moment, listening to the silence she left behind. A silence that somehow felt less empty now. Outside, snowflakes spiraled in the glow of the streetlights. Eleanor looked down at the bracelet again, her heart unsteady but alive. For the first time in years, Christmas didn't feel like a season to survive. It felt like a beginning. Winter melted into weeks of quiet routine. Simple visits, shared dinners, and soft laughter that came more easily each time. What began as a chance encounter had slowly become something like a rhythm. Something Eleanor hadn't realized she'd been missing until it was there. She found herself returning to the modest apartment often. Sometimes she brought cookies she'd baked herself, though she pretended not to notice when Leo declared them too fancy. Other times, she came empty-handed, staying just to listen to his stories or sit beside Alex as Leo worked on his endless art projects. Those visits became the highlight of her days. The emptiness of her penthouse didn't sting as much afterward. The echo of her loneliness softened, replaced by the memory of warmth, of voices, of belonging. But under the comfort, something else began to stir, a quiet fear. One afternoon, while Leo was building a paper rocket fleet on the floor, Alex poured tea for two. He moved more carefully these days when Eleanor was around, a small awareness between them that hadn't been there before. When he handed her the cup, their fingers brushed, and for a fleeting moment neither of them moved. Eleanor's eyes lifted to meet his, the kind of gaze that carried 1,000 words left unsaid. It should have been simple. Friendship, gratitude, but feelings, once woken, rarely stay quiet. Days turned to weeks, and the visits grew longer. Sometimes she and Alex would talk after Leo fell asleep, about music, about books, about how life could change so quickly. The silence between them grew comfortable, until one day it wasn't. On a gray afternoon, she arrived at the apartment with a soft knock. Leo wasn't there at a friend's house. Alex had said over phone. She'd almost turned back, but his voice had been strained somehow, different. Now, standing in his doorway, she could see it in his face, something weighing on him. He gestured her inside quietly. The room felt different today. No music, no laughter, just the ticking of the wall clock and the soft hiss of the radiator. Tea, he asked. She nodded, uneasy. Tea sound nice. He poured it, hands steady but eyes unfocused. Then, before she could even lift the cup, he spoke. I know who you are. The words hung there, sharp, heavy, unrelenting. Eleanor froze. What? I've known for a while, he said quietly. Eleanor Vance, the CEO of Vance Innovations. Her stomach turned. The room suddenly felt smaller, colder. He didn't sound angry, just hurt. I needed to say it, he continued. I needed to know if any of this, he gestured between them, his voice breaking slightly, if any of this was real or if I was just another one of your charity projects. She shook her head, stunned. Alex, no, it's not. I'm not mad that you didn't tell me, he interrupted, though his tone said otherwise. I don't know where I stand with you. I can't compete with that world of yours. I can't even imagine it. His voice cracked on the last word, raw and vulnerable. Eleanor's heart ached. You were never supposed to compete, she whispered. You were supposed to be the one place I didn't have to hide. Her voice trembled, tears welling in her eyes. You think this was about pity? Alex, you and Leo, you gave me my life back. He looked at her, conflicted, pain flickering behind his calm facade. Then why hide who you are? Why let me find out like that? She hesitated, struggling to breathe past the lump in her throat. Because people see the money before they see me. And I didn't want to lose the one person who didn't. Silence filled the room. Heavy, cutting, the kind of silence that could break hearts if held too long. Alex looked away, his jaw tightening. I don't know what to do with that, he admitted softly. I don't know how to be around you now. She reached toward him instinctively, but he stepped back, and the movement shattered something inside her. Alex, please. He shook his head. I just need some time. Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. Only the sound of her own heartbeat and a hollow ache spreading in her chest. The silence stretched between them, unbearable. Then she whispered, barely audible, You were the only thing that ever felt real. His eyes closed briefly, as though the words themselves hurt. She turned away, wheeling herself toward the door. Her hands shook on the metal rims. The little bracelet Leo had given her slipped slightly down her wrist, the colored beads catching the light one last time before she left. The door clicked shut behind her. Outside, the snow had started again, soft, slow flakes falling through the gray light. She sat still on the sidewalk for a long time, her breath fogging the cold air, her heart pounding with a kind of pain she hadn't known she could still feel. Across the city, Alex stood in his quiet apartment, staring at the empty chair she'd left behind. He wanted to run after her, to take it all back. But pride and fear are stubborn things. And so neither of them moved. Days became weeks. The bracelet stayed on Eleanor's wrist, a fragile reminder of something that might have been. The laughter that used to echo through Alex's home grew dim. Leo asked about her once, maybe twice, and then stopped. Children heal faster. Adults pretend to. Both of them, Eleanor in her gleaming penthouse, Alex in his humble apartment, try to go back to their old lives. But no amount of work, no amount of noise could drown out the quiet truth that lingered in both their hearts. They had seen each other, truly seen each other, and that kind of connection doesn't fade. It just waits. Spring arrived quietly, the kind that sneaks up on the city, the snow melting into glistening puddles, the air softer, forgiving. But inside Eleanor's penthouse, the silence remained untouched. It had been months since she last saw Alex. Months since she felt Leo's small hand tug at hers. The bracelet still rested on her wrist, a little frayed now. Some beads cracked, but she couldn't bring herself to take it off. It was her only tether to a life that had felt real. She'd thrown herself into recovery. Doctors, therapists, endless hours of pain and determination. There were moments she wanted to quit, when every movement felt like a cruel reminder of what she'd lost. But every time she closed her eyes, she saw Leo's grin. She heard his little voice saying, "You shouldn't be alone." So she kept going. Each morning, she pushed harder. Each night, she collapsed in exhaustion. And slowly, impossibly, her body began to remember strength. It wasn't a miracle. It was grit. It was hope. It was love, even if she couldn't call it that anymore. By early spring, she could stand, trembling, unsteady, but standing. The first time she took a step, She cried, not out of pain, but because it felt like she was walking towards something again, instead away. Still, her heart ached for what she couldn't fix. Alex never called. Neither did she. Pride kept them both silent. Pride and the belief that maybe what they'd share was too fragile to survive reality. But love has strange ways of showing itself. One afternoon, Eleanor sat at her desk, reviewing files. Her company, Vance Innovations, was thriving, but she barely cared. The papers blurred together until a name caught her eye. Alexander Reed. It was a job listing. A senior architect position at a prestigious design firm her company quietly funded. His resume had crossed her desk by coincidence, or maybe by fate. She read his application twice. His words were humble, heartfelt. He didn't know who would see it. He didn't know she'd see him. Eleanor smiled softly, her fingers hovering over the approval line. She didn't hesitate. Within days, Alex received the offer, generous, unexpected, life-changing. He stared at it in disbelief, wondering how luck had finally decided to find him. He never knew it wasn't luck. Eleanor didn't want credit. She didn't want him to owe her anything. She just wanted him to have a future, even if it didn't include her. Her quiet act of love, invisible, unspoken, became her way of saying goodbye. Weeks passed. The city bloomed. Eleanor began walking again, slowly, carefully, each step stronger than the last. Her therapist called it a miracle. She called it a promise kept. To herself, to Leo, to the life she still believed in. But there were moments, late at night, when she would find herself by the window, looking down at the city lights, wondering if Alex ever thought of her, wondering if Leo still wore that same big smile when he talked about the woman in the wheelchair who once joined them for dinner. Sometimes she would whisper their names into the quiet, just to feel them there again. And though she told herself she'd moved on, deep down, she knew the truth. Love doesn't disappear when it's unspoken. It transforms. It becomes a gentle push that keeps you standing. The invisible force that carries you through the hardest days. The quiet strength that says, keep going, you're not done yet. So she did. She walked further every day. She smiled more easily. She even laughed sometimes. But in the back of her mind, she carried one thought, one that refused to fade. If love had brought them together once, maybe, just maybe, life wasn't finished writing their story. The park looked different now. The snow was long gone, replaced by soft grass and sunlight that glimmered through the trees. Children's laughter echoed in the distance. The same park, the same benches, but a different season, a different Eleanor. She stood at the edge of the path, one hand steady on her cane, the other brushing against the simple bracelet still circling her wrist. The little string was worn, but she'd never replaced it. Some things, she thought, aren't meant to be perfect. They're meant to last. A familiar voice called out across the park, bright, innocent, alive. Eleanor, look what I built. She turned, smiling. Leo came running toward her, a whirlwind of energy and sunshine, his small hands clutching a crooked paper kite. His cheeks were flushed, his hair sticking out in every direction, just as she remembered. Behind him, Alex followed, slower, more measured, but when their eyes met, the air between them shifted. Months had passed since that painful goodbye. Yet, somehow, time hadn't erased what they shared. It had only softened it. Eleanor's breath caught as Alex stopped beside her, his hands in his pockets, that same thoughtful look in his eyes. You're walking, he said softly. Not a question, more like wonder. She nodded, her smile quiet, tender. I am, still a little wobbly, but I'm walking. He chuckled, a sound that felt like home. You always did move mountains when you set your mind to it. A pause. The kind that carries more emotion than words ever could. I heard about your promotion, she said gently, looking up at him. Congratulations, Alex. You deserve it. He hesitated, searching her face. That was you, wasn't it? Eleanor didn't answer right away. She just looked out at Leo, who was trying to get his kite airborne, laughing every time it tumbled back to the ground. Finally, she said, it doesn't matter who it was. You earned it. You always did. He took a step closer. You didn't have to do that. Her eyes glistened in the golden light. I know, but I wanted to. Silence again, soft but full. Then, slowly, Alex reached for her hand. His fingers brushed hers, tentative at first, then steady. He squeezed gently. You gave Leo his laughter back, he said quietly. And you showed me how to live again. You didn't just fix your legs. Eleanor, you fixed us. Her breath caught. Tears welled up, shimmering like sunlight on glass. She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time in her life, she didn't see a man she could lose. She saw home. No, she whispered, her voice trembling. You too taught me that the greatest fortune isn't in a bank account, it's right here. She pressed her hand to her heart. You were my miracle. Leo came running back then, his laughter cutting through the quiet emotion like a burst of color. He wrapped his little arms around Eleanor's waist, hugging her tightly. Did you see Eleanor? My kite almost flew. She bent slightly, balancing on her cane, and cupped his cheek. Almost? I think it did. He grinned proudly, then looked between her and his father, his eyes sparkling with curiosity. Papa says you're going to come over for dinner again. You are, right? Eleanor and Alex exchanged a glance, a soft, knowing one. Yes, she said finally, smiling. I think I like that very much. Leo beamed. Good. I'll make dessert. As he darted away again, Alex's arm slipped gently around Eleanor's shoulders. It felt natural, easy, like something that had been waiting to fall back into place. The sun dipped lower, painting the park in shades of gold and rose. Eleanor leaned into him, her cane forgotten for a moment, her heart steady. She whispered, half to him, half to herself. I spent so long building walls, and all it took was one small boy with a bracelet to remind me how to let someone in. Alex smiled. He's good at that. Leo turned then, waving his arms. Papa, Eleanor, come help me fly it. They laughed together and began walking toward him, step by step, side by side. When Leo's kite finally caught the wind, soaring high above the park, Eleanor looked up and felt something she hadn't in years. Peace, love, home. And as Alex's hand found hers again, she realized she wasn't walking towards something anymore. She was already there. Home wasn't a place. It was them. The seasons turned once more, as they always do, and the city settled into the soft rhythm of another year. The park, now lush and green, carried the echoes of countless little stories. But one in particular had become part of its very heart. Eleanor Vance, the woman who once watched the world from behind glass, no longer lived in her silent penthouse high above the city. The quiet she once called home had been replaced by laughter, warmth, and the gentle chaos that only love can bring. Her new home was filled with light. Sunshine streamed through the windows. A child's drawing hung slightly crooked on the refrigerator. Down the hall, the sound of Leo's laughter drifted to the air, light, free, and full of life. On the dining table sat a small vase holding a single wildflower. Beside it lay a simple, frayed bracelet, the same little thread of color that once bridged two lonely hearts. And next to it, a photograph, Eleanor, Alex, and Leo smiling together. A family, imperfect but whole. Life hadn't gone the way Eleanor once imagined. It went better. It went truer. She no longer needed power. She no longer needed walls or armor or the endless noise of success. All she ever needed was connection, a hand reaching out in kindness, a boy with a bracelet, and a heart big enough to change her world. Because sometimes it doesn't take grand gestures or perfect timing. Sometimes it just takes one small act of courage to see someone, to reach out, to care. And that single act can ripple through a life forever. Now, when the wind moves to the park where it all began, it carries with it the faint sound of laughter, a reminder of how love can grow from even the smallest seed of kindness. So, when you see someone sitting alone, remember Eleanor, remember Leo, remember that even the smallest kindness can change everything. Thank you for listening to this story. If it touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a little warmth today. And don't forget to subscribe to Heartfelt Tales TV. where every story reminds us that love still exists in the quiet corners of life. Until next time, keep your heart open. You never know who might need it.